Isuzu has a problem. Australia's increasingly strict emission standards is bad news for a company that produces only two vehicles, both of them diesels, the D-Max Ute and the MUX SUV. In response, they're introducing a new 2.2 litre turbo diesel engine, which is both more efficient and economical than the 1.9 litre turbo diesel that it replaces. And this new 2.2 joins the stalwart 3 litre turbo diesel in Isuzu's lineup.
Chasing cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
It might not sound terribly substantial, but there are many reasons for the larger 2.2 litre engine to land. Aussies never really gelled with an Isuzu engine that started with the number 1, but this 2.2 litre sounds a bit more substantial. And it's got reasonable numbers. The new 2.2 offers 120 kilowatts and 400 newton meters, which is up from the 1.9's 110 kilowatts and 350 newton meters. Perhaps more importantly, the 2.2 gives 3.5 tons towing capacity, the same as the 3 litre above it, and that is something that Aussies certainly want. Economy is as good as 6.3 litres per 100 kilometres if you get the 4x2 version, and that's partly due to the introduction of an auto stop-start system, the first time I've seen it in an Isuzu. Now, they've not introduced that before because, as we know as drivers, it's a very annoying system. But now it seems to have to be introduced to meet these government targets because it does substantially reduce emissions and your fuel economy. Also helping matters is a brand new ASIN 8-speed automatic transmission. So that means you're getting 2 gears more in the 2.2 litres that you would over the old 3 litre turbo diesel. Prices are up slightly over the 1.9 litre they replace. $37,000 drive away for a 4x2 D-Max and $49,000 drive away for a 4x2 MUX. And if you want the range-topping 2.2 litres with 4x4 that everyone wants, it's $57,000 to drive away the D-Max and 70 grand to drive away the MUX version. Isuzu's calling these new models the model year 25.5. This is the highest grade you can get with the 2.2 litre in the D-Max, and this is the one that you get all the cool blackout bits, black grille, LED headlights. These are 17-inch black alloys, and then you got the likes of a black sports bar out the back. Now, we've done so many Isuzu videos with D-Max and MUX, so I won't bore you by showing you all around again, but we'll have a quick look inside just as a reminder. Despite this being the highest grade 2.2 litre D-Max you can get, it still feels very utilitarian in here. You have to move into the 3 litre engine models to get things like leather and heated seats. So what have we got in this one? It's an 8-inch screen. You haven't got anything like wireless charging, which even though you do have wireless Apple CarPlay here, I've got nowhere to charge my phone. It's just this bit of plastic here, and everything through here still feels very plasticky, and you've still got to put a key in the ignition in this model. Even though it's the highest grade, you still only get cloth seats in this vehicle and still a manual handbrake as well, and it does feel very plasticky throughout, which is fine if you just want to keep things simple, but it doesn't feel anywhere as fancy as something like a new Ford Ranger. Okay, I think that's enough for showing around here. Let's go and see what this new 2.2 litre diesel actually feels like off-road and on-road. It's a bit of an in-betweener, this 2.2 litre turbo diesel. The 1.9 that it replaces, that never really quite suited the Isuzu brand, a brand that's forged itself on the 3 litre large displacement diesel engine. It also really couldn't get out of its own way. It really is not a very powerful engine at all. And on first sample, this 2.2 just has that bit more guts that's going to make it more appealing. But that 3 litre, as the option remaining in the brand as well, that's a bit of a problem child for Isuzu, because every time they sell one of those, as our emissions testing and regulations get more and more strict, it's going to cost Isuzu more and more money that's going to be passed on to the consumer. So you sense that Isuzu really needs its customers to buy a fair number of these 2.2s, and it's going to start pushing them onto people, which is no bad thing. On first try, you can tell that it's not got the guts of the 3 litres, of course it doesn't, but I reckon it's going to work for a good number of people. Earlier I had a quick try with this D-Max 2.2 towing a 2-ton caravan, and I suppose you wouldn't exactly choose this 2.2 over the 3 litre as your preferred tow vehicle, but with that 3.5 ton rating, it's definitely an option. What I found towing was it could handle it, but you definitely wanted a little bit more power, especially going up the hills. It wasn't exactly ideal. Like I said, it was handling it. I probably wouldn't want to be towing much more than 2 tons regularly, so I'm sure anyone that is going to be towing a larger van or is towing very regularly, you're always going to pick the 3 litre. So I think this model, especially on the private market, is aimed at those people that'll do either little or no towing, and then using the D-Max or the MUX 2.2 as the family vehicle or for off-roading, and which is exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm at an off-road course facility and I'm going to give it a quick go. So I'm just going to move our D-Max into low range, and that's a pretty simple process in this thing. Unlike more complicated systems, we're able just to use little buttons and dials, knobs, what have you, just to make it work. So keeping it nice and analog and simple rather than through a screen, that's all rather good and useful and reliable. The D-Max and the MUX with the 2.2 litre, they have both got rear diff locks and also our standard rough terrain mode. Now, rough terrain mode has been in these vehicles for a few years, and I am deeply impressed with what this stuff can do. What it does is that helps with your traction system, especially when you've got one wheel off the ground or one wheel is spinning, and it's able to completely slow down the spin, send torque to an individual wheel, and it really does dig you out of some pretty nasty situations. I've been climbing with this thing and we just left it without rough terrain mode, and the front end was just spinning up, dust was everywhere. Flicked it into rough terrain mode and it was able to easily climb, and I'm just going to have a quick go of that now. So we're just spinning up there. Let me take it back, and rough terrain mode is just a quick press and hold of a button here. Okay, we're locked in, and then the key is you don't need shed loads of momentum here. The idea is to keep things super easy, super competent, and it's just gonna slowly climb up at even lower than walking pace. You can see it was really going to start to slip then, and it just handled that no problems at all, and it just walks up. It really is a clever system. Even the 4x4 gurus that I've spoken to, they really do say that this system is something else in the Isuzu, and it does make serious off-roading pretty simple indeed. Now here's a fun stat with this new 2.2 litre engine. At 1,000 revs per minute, so basically just over idle, so next to nothing, you've got 60% more torque than that old 1.9 litre engine had. So it's able to just stay in gear much easier, and you're going to get really good response from very low down. So holding in gear means you're not going to get that horrible revvy gear dropping that you would get in the 1.9, which is ideal for towing or for serious off-roading situations. It really does just walk over these things. One thing that this D-Max that I'm in lacks that you do get in the MUX is a frontal camera, which I think is a really big miss actually, because if you're going to use these things seriously off-road, in the likes of say a Toyota Prado or the Ford Ranger, they have this wide angle camera at the front, so if you're pointing skywards, which I kind of am at the moment, you can sometimes not even see the road ahead of you, just seeing sky. And if you've got that frontal camera coming through here, then you're able to see and direct the car much safer. So like I say, you get that on the SUV but not here on the Ute, which is a little bit of a disappointment. I've also got a very easy to engage hill descent control here, so I just knock that in. I do love this for going down hills. You just press that button, take your feet off everything, and we're just crawling along at 3 kilometers an hour. It's absolutely easy, very leisurely, very simple. Again, as we expect with all modern utes, and especially these D-Maxes that do have a decent reputation off-road, makes off-roading very easy indeed. No matter what type of D-Max or MUX driver you are, you will be spending a lot of time on the road, no doubt. So these things have to work very well here. And certainly the 2.2 offering in this D-Max, guys, the 4x4, 6.6 litres per 100 kilometers, that's really good. But it does come, of course, with that stop-start system, which, having driven it in town a little bit, yes, it's annoying, but at least it starts up quickly when you take your foot off the brake, or even just a little turn of the steering wheel gets it going again as well. So it's not ideal. You can tell that Isuzu didn't want to introduce it into their vehicles because it's probably customer feedback, and certainly from journalists like us, we don't particularly like it and we turn it off. But seemingly it saves a hell of a lot of fuel and reduces those emissions that are so important these days. So if I just move us into manual mode, and then if I floor it, the engine feels pretty smooth. It's certainly not exactly what you'd call a powerhouse, but then even Isuzu's 3-litre turbo diesel isn't exactly that. But you can feel there's guts enough, and it's quick enough off the mark, and there's throttle delay, of course there is, but it gets going, and certainly around town where you've got the low down torque and it just kicks on, it's fine for that. On a country road like this, if I floor it, yeah, it's slow, easy pull, but certainly nothing fearsome, and certainly it's not a ute that you're going to buy for many thrills. What I do like, however, is this 8-speed auto gearbox. This feels like a really good step up for Isuzu, because we're used to them just having the 6-speed, the same torque converter 6-speed that they've had for a very long time. And this 8-speed Aisin gearbox, it's only available with the 2.2 litre, so you can't get it in the 3 litre. So if you want those 2 extra cogs, you're going to need to choose the 2.2 rather than that 3 litre. So that's something worth thinking about, and certainly I reckon if you're towing, those 2 extra gears are going to be very advantageous as well. Just pulling up a hill, and there's reasonable pull. I don't think you'd particularly care that this thing's underpowered for most of the daily duties. It's going along at a fair lick, and you can certainly hear it. It doesn't sound quite as muscular as the 3 litre, but certainly feels like it's got more get up and go than the old 1.9, which really was quite wheezy. So this is a really good in-between kind of engine. So I think Isuzu's played a bit of a blinder here. This is the right engine, and if it can appeal to the people that test it, if you're going to try the 3 litre, then hop in this and think it's going to be good enough, then I reckon they'll get enough sales, and it will mean the government's going to be a lot more friendly to them when it comes to our new vehicle emissions standards. This being the top spec that you can get with the 2.2 litre, that has 3-leaf suspension at the back, so that's actually designed more for a lifestyle vehicle as opposed to the more rugged work trucks which have more leaves in their springs. So this one, even without load in the back, because it's got that more sort of on-road, unladen friendly 3-leaf, it does actually ride pretty well for a ute, these things. I mean, of course it's still going to jiggle around a bit, but it's very settled, and I still reckon these D-Maxes are up there with the best utes out there in terms of just everyday ride comfort. It's going along, it's a pretty choppy bit of road here, and I've got one wheel on the dirt and one wheel on the bitumen, and she's riding pretty true. And like I say, with no weight in the back, you throw half a ton in the back of this, it's going to get even more stable. So yeah, pretty impressive, these things, and certainly if I was going to buy a D-Max for an everyday vehicle, I'd really want this 3-leaf suspension. And when I'm just cruising along like this, it's whisper quiet, and if you're gentle on the throttle, you can just awaken that diesel a little bit, but it's not intrusive in the cabin. It's only when you've really got to put the shoe in a little bit that it gets a little bit grumbly when it's working quite hard. But again, there's nothing different than you get there in Isuzu's 3 litre. I tell you what will hold this vehicle back though, is the perception that an Isuzu must have that 3 litre. That is the tried and tested, some call it bulletproof. People want to go touring Australia with a van on the back, and they like the safe feeling of the large displacement 3 litre. But I reckon as times change, we're moving on, we're evolving, people are more conscious of we do have to be a little bit more eco-aware and reduce our carbon footprint. I think that would then drive people more to the 2.2, and I think that's what Isuzu really wants us to do, especially if you're not going to be towing a 2.5 ton van around Australia. But there'll always be those, of course there will, that no, I just want the 3 litre, the 2.2's just not big enough, where of course they'll be right in some way. If it's an image thing, you want the bigger engine. But I think the smart choice, you're going to be saving money on the purchase price, you're going to be saving money when it comes to fueling it as well. So those are the advantages of this 2.2, and they're pretty compelling. It's just, I'd get you to, whatever your use case is for a D-Max or an MUX, hop in it, have a try of the 3 litre, have a try of the 2.2 and see what you reckon. But certainly when it comes to the MUX, the SUV, I'd say as a family vehicle, if you're just using that for the school run, for the commute, and then for weekend playtime, and you're probably never going to tow anything with it, the 2.2 makes absolute sense. and I reckon you'll save a good chunk of money as well. So it's a good move, ditching that 1.9 and moving to the 2.2. I reckon this could work pretty well for Isuzu, especially while we wait to see what their next move is when it comes to any form of electrification, because let's be honest, they're going to have to act, and act pretty quick, because these emissions tests are getting even more strict. So we'll see what happens, but for now, this is a pretty good solution. So what are our first thoughts on first sample of Isuzu's new 2.2 litre diesel engine? Well, first of all, it's no economical powerhouse in terms of there's no hybridization. That's something Isuzu still needs to work on, of course. But for living with it, for our brief off-roading, it's proved to be perfectly capable. It's so important that these things tow 3.5 tons, both the D-Max and the MUX SUV. I would say that if you are a serious tower, if you have a big caravan or a big boat, you're still going to pick the 3 litre. In fact, many Aussies might just still choose the 3 litre because of that larger displacement engine and the more power and torque. But there's certainly going to be a market for this 2.2 litre, and I think it is a big improvement on the outgoing 1.9 litre, which really had trouble getting out of its own way. It had such little power and torque. I think if you're going to use these vehicles as an everyday car going around with the kids, or just mild off-roading without much on the back ever, I think it's a great choice. You're going to be saving money, and key for Isuzu, you're going to be saving fuel, and there's less emissions as well, making them more popular with the government. It's an interesting one. I'd love to know your thoughts on this new 2.2 litre D-Max and MUX. Please leave any comments below, and thank you as ever for watching Chasing Cars.